Flash flooding sweeps home off their foundations, and 44 people are missing in Virginia as Glenn Youngkin declares a state of emergency for the state. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that and where we go from there, and hopefully not have to say a lot of F's about the state of Virginia in the next few days. Joe Biden goes to Israel and immediately asks, "Hey man, what am I doing here?" So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that and where we go. Mexico commits $1.5 billion to build, well, I guess it's not really a wall, is it? It's more like an express lane. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. And the Columbus man who apparently raped the 10-year-old girl that gave us the entire narrative of why we need to have Roe versus Wade once again has been arrested, even though mysteriously 2 days ago there was no record that any of this even happened. So we'll be talking just a bit about what happened there, why I don't buy it, in spite of the fact there are court records there, and, well, what this means going forward. It is going to be all this and more. You are a bunch of lovely breakfast tacos. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So this happened this morning. It's apparently this was between the time that because I was laying in bed looking at some last minute news entries, which I didn't really find anything last minute off of there, but just kind of scrolling through Twitter, like, oh, is there anything else that I want to do? Found a tweet by Greg Price that I wanted to use today, put it in the Discord, and I know it went up and showed up in the Discord because Midget B has already said, oh, well, and there it is, right there, going off with this. And I went to go pull it up over on my computer. I got up, I peed, threw a few clothes on, and got a few things ready to go. Pulled it up on my computer and got this. I've gone back, I've refreshed the front page off of this, I've tried to do it on my phone. Now, nothing will get retrieved on my phone either. So it does appear that Twitter is down, which is why, I guess if it's working for you, you haven't seen the notification for me yet, but that adds a whole degree of difficulty for the morning show. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that because I set all of this up last night, all the tweets and everything else that we had to go through with video, except for the Greg Price one, which would be this one over here, are still there and still preserved. And unless something goes and massively refreshes, or for whatever reason Google Chrome crashes, we still can go forward almost as planned. But I mean, I thought I was suspended. I only got suspended the once, and it was a little bit hazy as to what happened there, but I thought I got banned, suspended, IP banned or something, but I tried to do it incognito and looked up our favorite hype man over here using an incognito window, so not logged in, with no record, honk honk, of the fact that I was even on, like, this is even my IP address, and still something went wrong. Try reloading. So we'll look at the down detector too, just to have a look at that. But yeah, I went through everything to go and look and see if maybe there's just something that's wrong here. But no, it does appear that everything is down. Something went wrong. Try to reloading, which means that productivity in corporate America, up until, well, they go back and get this fixed, is going to go up 95% today. Let's get into the news. Before we get started, head on over, check out all the great creators from turnsofpagesproductions.com. We are still working on securing a website. We have the website secured, but securing funding to get a web developer to go and get this all put up, built up, and ready to go. But do not let that stop you from going and checking out great creators such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Occasional Ignoramus, the Sometimes Ignoramus. I don't even know where we're going with this and what our frequency is anymore, but also check out The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-rated conservative, and the Porch Boys. Go hang out with, once Twitter comes back up, with KTZed and Brit of Tweets by Brit, both of whom are doing the Lord's work with criminal justice reform, or not reform, but analytics, criminal justice analytics, and sketch comedy. A new sketch comedy show coming from Tweets by Brit. Pay attention here for more details. Of course, you will get promoted. Go check out all those great creators. Once, of course, we have the ability to go back and do so. And let's get down into everything, shall we? Starting in with the Dow for the morning. The Dow had quite a tumultuous day yesterday. It dropped almost immediately at the start of the day. It came back up. It did crest over the previous close just briefly, but then it dumped back out. And in the end of the day, dumped down to 37.72.79, just slightly down below, but it looks like the futures are looking down as well. It looks like a bunch of people tried to buy the dip, is what I'm guessing out of all this. It looks like they came out and said, oh, cool, I can go get all this stock for cheap and make a fortune. And, you know, once people started to see some of their other stocks, the stuff that they had, rising up a little bit, the mentality came up of, oh man, I gotta sell so I don't lose my ass completely off of this. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll continue to watch this where it goes, looking into the Bitcoin. From midnight to now, the Bitcoin is down 473 US dollars and 70 US cents to 19,744.40. I'm sorry, coming back up to 771.70, but bringing this back out to the 5-day, it looks like throughout the day yesterday, it took a tumultuous dip almost down to 19,000, clawed its way back, but then started losing again. So we'll see what happens. What happens while people wake up, look at their Coinbase and say, hey, cool, I'm not going to lose as much as I did anymore, and see if they sell again. Once again, Bitcoin, not itself a great store of wealth, but definitely something to watch and see where the economy is going, because it's one of the more liquid assets that you have out there. It's one of the easiest ones to sell back up, which means if you need the gas, the diapers, and you thought that you'll come back and try to retire off the currency, it's going to be one of the first things you can move. You can go over to Coinbase and just get rid of. Get some US dollars back in your account for the diapers, the food, the gas, etc., the things that you need. So this is one of the reasons. I know I get criticism for using this segment, looking at this. Spartan was the one that turned me onto it in the beginning. But it does seem to be one of the quickest indicators of what's happening in the economy in the very shortest of short terms. So that's why I keep going with it and looking at it every day. Looking in at the gas. From Gas Buddy, Woodman's in Sun Prairie has dropped all the way to $3.89. We're getting closer. I don't know if we're going to get back down into the $2 or $1 range, but down to $3.89. Most of the other stations around the Sun Prairie area are up to down to $3.97 or $3.98. Getting down into Madison proper, we're starting to see the threes in Madison proper themselves. The Mobile and Kelly's Market on Gammon Road is down to $3.99. The other Madison proper stations, the Quick Trip on Mineral Point and the Quick Trip in Schrader Road, are both at $4.03. But a sharp reprieve from what we saw just a couple weeks ago for the 4th. So definitely something to watch, something to keep going with that and see what we're doing. Man, I wish I could have been seeing these prices while I was traveling across the country, but such is life, and you still get to see great friends and make meaningful connections when you do, so I can't fault any of this here, but that's what we're seeing off the gas. Let's open up IBD and see what it is that they have to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures fall sharply as Fed ready for everything. Oh, advertisement, 2 days of prime pricing. Dow futures fall sharply as Fed ready for everything. JP Morgan earnings miss, and we talked a bit about why I think that is yesterday. From Ed Carson, Dow futures fell sharply early Thursday, along with the S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures, with weak JP Morgan earnings weighing on the market. The stock market rally retreated Wednesday, but closed off lows as investors tried to weigh the implications of a hot inflation report, and the Federal Reserve being even more aggressive with rate hikes. Could we get a 100-point rate hike? Could they actually hike at 1%? I feel like they could at this point. Treasury yields sent louder recession signals. Taiwan Semiconductor slightly beat second quarter views overnight, with the chip foundry guiding higher on quarter 3 revenue. TSM stock rose nearly 2% before the open, but it is in a long downtrend. JP Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley reported weaker than expected quarter 2 EPS and revenue before the open, with JP Morgan also suspending buybacks. JP Morgan lost 3%, and Morgan Stanley fell 1%. JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley have also been sliding for months. Li Auto rebounded bullishly Wednesday, while EV giants Tesla and BYD tried to find support at key levels. Shockwave Medical, AstraZeneca, and McKesson showed constructive action near 5 points. Olaplex flashed positive signals after the 2021 IPO sold off for much of the year. In other Tesla news, AI chief Andrej Karpathy says he's stepping down, confirming a long-held speculation. BYD says it expects to report booming first-half profit. It's China, so that's honkity-honk in and of itself. Li stock was added to swing trader on Wednesday. Li Auto, AstraZeneca, and Merck are on the IBD 50. Li Auto was also Wednesday's IBD stock of the day. On the futures, Dow futures fell 1.6% versus fair value, with JP Morgan, a Dow component. S&P 500 futures retreated 1.5% as bank stocks retreated on JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley results. NASDAQ futures declined 1.1%. The 10-year yield rose 3 basis points to 2.93%. The 2-year yield climbed 5 basis points to 3.19%. Crude oil futures fell more than 2%. Copper prices lost more than 1%. At 8:30 a.m., The Labor Department will release the June Producer Price Index and weekly jobless claims. Will the PPI show any cooling in wholesale inflation? Jobless claims will remain low, but should continue to show a trend of slowly easing labor markets. Yes, but we still need to sit back and do labor force participation. It's great that unemployment is this low because that's your local government's not paying out the unemployment insurance, and the small business is also not paying out the unemployment insurance. But with that being said, now how many people have dropped out of the labor force? How many of them are living off of state benefits? How many are just looking out and saying, I give up? We'll see what happens with that. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So a few things to look at with this. A few things to look at where the markets are. Now, obviously, you're going to start seeing, when you start to see the inflation going this way, a slowdown in some of the markets, some of the car markets, some of the product markets. People are going to be dealing with the TV that they have, not going out and buying a new one. The console markets are going to go down. Even the cell phone markets are going to go down, with people going back and picking up whatever they can find over on Craigslist to try to keep themselves through. I've actually had, because I acquired for free a Galaxy S8, which is going rate, probably about $150 to go and sell outright for cash. And I just keep getting people coming, will you take $50 cash for it? Will you take $50 cash for it? Which, I mean, I got it for free, so it's no loss to me, but still, it is a sign of the times and where we're at right now, where, you know, you drop your phone, you break it, you have nothing, and now you're going out and begging somebody to go back and knock 67% off the price that they have. But the banks, that's what I really want to pay attention to with this, because the banks do make money off of you having savings. They make money off of taking loans as well, which is also going to affect especially your big banks when the interest rates are high and not everybody can go out and take a new loan. But also, having that savings account there, they do need to balance their sheets. And if they can't balance their sheets, they need to borrow money from the Fed. If people are burning through their savings, which it does tend to look like right now, I know that there wasn't a lot of savings that was going on under the good years under Trump, but that was people paying off a lot of the debts from the Obama years. We were just starting to get to the point that savings were there, and now they're starting to get burned through again, which is pushing against the earnings for these banks. They don't have as much as they can loan out, so everything that they have available has to come on the prime rate or above. So the only way they can make money is to charge out the butt for interest. It's getting into a very, very vicious cycle. And I mean, I'm sitting here ready to go just sit down and say, okay, we're going to weather the storm here. Going to go can a bunch more stuff, grow some more vegetables, and hope and pray that I don't lose my job throughout all this. But man, is it getting worrying right now out here. So if you can, hunker down, cut some spending a little bit, and grab that extra can of Spam every time you go to the store. And it's going to make your life a whole lot easier as we go. All right. Let's grab one from Market Watch, and then we will get into, well, I've got actually one more financial news here. U.S. stock futures inch up ahead of CPI data. This is an old article. All right, let's just listen to Manchin then. From the USA Today, Joe Manchin cools on spending negotiations, citing fears of an inflation fire. From Joey Garrison. Just when Democrats seem closer to reviving parts of President Biden's stalled domestic agenda, Joe Manchin pumped the brakes on Wednesday. The West Virginia Democrat, whose vote is critical for a bill the White House is waiting on, issued a blistering statement on soaring inflation, casting doubt about how far he's willing to go in a spending package. Without Manchin, the Biden admin's plans to address climate change, overhaul taxes, and lower prescription drug prices hang in the balance. Manchin said it's time to get unnecessary spending under control, calling inflation a clear and present danger to our economy. No matter what spending aspirations some in Congress may have, it's clear that anyone who visits a grocery store or a gas station that we cannot add any more fuel to this inflation fire, Manchin said. Manchin said he's going to make sure he scrubs any item that could be considered inflationary. We can't afford mistakes in this highest inflation we've seen in 40 years. Dude, it is time to axe the Build Back Better bill. New CPI data showed inflation jumped 9.1% in June over last year, notching another 40-year high. Manchin has been negotiating with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to find common ground on prescription drug prices, taxing the wealthiest Americans, extending Medicare's solvency, and provisions to address climate change. Schumer and Manchin reached agreements only on prescription drug provisions. That might be as far as Manchin is willing to go. His opposition doomed the president's $2.2 trillion Build Back Better bill last year. It's so weird because I'm trying to compete with the AM radio folks. I can't even say the other B word that I usually use for this, but it is what it is. The takeaways: Manchin's repeatedly cited inflation as a hang-up, keeping him from getting behind a budget bill. The timing of the June inflation report, just as talks were heating up, was less than ideal for Democrats. Time is running out for Biden and Democrats to pass major legislation before the midterm elections in November. Schumer is working to get something done before the August recess. So, can you imagine, by the way, if BBB had been passed, where we'd be at right now? Because once again, and I always point this out, when they raise the prime interest rate, Congress can still print money. Well, can still request the Fed print money, rather. But Congress can still get all the funding for what they want. They either go borrow it, put it against the national debt, against the balance sheet, and put out a bunch of bonds for it, which is probably why bonds are so high right now, especially on the short term. Or get the Fed to go print out more dollar bills, or, in our case, add more ones and zeros to everything. I mean, I look back and I wonder, where would we be if Democrats had got their way at the beginning of the Pinko Pox? What was it, Rashida Tlaib? Let's just mint $2 trillion coins and that's going to solve all our problems. And just keep giving people recurring payments onto a debit card over and over again, which the debit card thing is always funny because, hey, you said something untoward towards Rashida Tlaib. Oops, you can't use your debit card. I'm sorry. It's government issue, and we have control over it. And oops, we have to suspend this until we review the untoward thing you said towards Rashida Tlaib. Oops, sorry. But it's all these spending packages. I mean, at this point, even the infrastructure package is starting to, like, if we hadn't passed this, would we be in a bearable situation right now? I can't say that we'd be in a good situation. I mean, stimulus after stimulus after stimulus. But now we have the infrastructure package on top of this, which is driving this up more and more instances of us putting money over into the Ukraine. Where could we be if we had just frozen spending for a congressional term? Manchin was right. He is a Democrat, and it is in his DNA to go back and try to spend money. But he looked at the situation and said, well, we can sit here and spend the money just like I was elected to do by Democrats in my state of West Virginia. Or we can hold off and see if we can't hold onto the Congress, get the economy better, and try to do this under a less inflationary situation. Make no mistake, Manchin wants us to go and spend all this money. The fact that he's having talks with Schumer tells us that he's not a complete ice queen about this entire thing. But he looks at this strategically and said, yeah, no, if we spend all this $2.2 trillion government spending, then we're going to be in a worse place than where we're at. So good on Manchin for that one. All right. So as we saw at the top of the show, I haven't looked to see if it's back yet, but Down Detector shows Twitter is down. 1,959 new comments since I looked last at the start of the show. Let's refresh this here. And you see the same thing. Bye, everyone. Twitter is back for me. I'll pray for you guys. Go read my fix. Cups of Stardust on AO3. Love you all. Is it back up? Now we have a bunch of people talking about OnlyFans. It does appear to be back up. Well, it looks like productivity is back down for Twitter, which means we'll have to go remember and go back and get the Greg Price tweet once we go talk about everything. And look, Fanning has even come out and put out a tweet for us, so... Alright, we are back up. Alright, let's talk about Virginia. Flash flooding sweeps homes off foundations in rural Virginia. Dozens reported missing. From Andrew Wolfeck over at Fox 5 DC. Swiftwater rescue crews are searching for dozens of people in the rural mountainous region of western Virginia after storms dumped more than half a foot of rain on Tuesday evening. The Virginia Department of Emergency Management and local rescue crews are going door to door in the area around Pilgrim's Knob in search of flooding victims. The Buchanan County Sheriff's Office said as many as 40 people were missing, but crews have not been able to make contact with all the residents in the impacted zone. Officials believe more than 100 homes were either damaged or destroyed by the flooding. Crews had difficulty accessing the hardest hit areas because of mudslides and blocked roadways. A witness told Fox Weather that homes were swept more than 300 feet off foundations, and the area looked like a war zone. Once I'd gotten down there, I could see the gravity of the whole situation, at least from where I parked. 4 homes were completely swept off their foundations. It was quite devastating to walk around, storm chaser Billy Bowling told Fox Weather. During the devastation, Virginia's governor declared a state of emergency on Wednesday to free up funds and resources for the hardest hit areas. Youngkin tweets, "I'm deeply saddened at the devastating news of flooding in Buchanan County. We are making every resource available to help those impacted while the rescue and recovery options continue. Please join me in prayer as we lift up our fellow Virginians impacted by this tragedy." Thousands of customers were without power in the region, and officials urged residents to boil water for consumption uses. The emergency shelter was opened at a local elementary school for flood victims to reunite with their loved ones. A hotline's been set up for residents to report missing family members. The phone number is 1-833-748-1424. Radar estimated more than 5 inches of rain fell in the area around Jewel Ridge, quickly inundating several creeks. The topography of this area is very tall, mountainous, and they drop sharply into the little valleys and hollows. In these communities that live at the bottom of these hollows, they basically become lakes waiting to happen when we have big instances like this, Bowling said. Rural areas near the Kentucky-West Virginia border have a history of seeing significant floodings when rain events train over the region for hours. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is in the midst of a flood reduction project to lessen the threat to homes and businesses in the county. So far, there have been no reported fatalities from the most recent event, but officials say search and rescue crews are a long way from completing their operation. The weather system that triggered the flash flooding also caused widespread wind damage in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Damaging wind gusts of more than 80 miles an hour caused trees to topple into the houses and block roadways. During the height of the storms, more than 300,000 customers were without power, so... a lot of stuff happening in Virginia right now, and I've seen some of the hollows in Virginia. Mostly in Maryland, because that was the direction that I went. But, you see all the... even if you're going along 95 in mostly sea-level flat area, you look off to the side, you see the mountains, even, hell, going through Tennessee, going through the Smoky Mountains. You start to see some of this and where stuff can come back and pool up, and some of the communities that they built into the base of the mountain. Chattanooga is built right into the base of the mountains. And as you go up, what is it? 24, I think? No, 75. As you go up 75, you see up, dip, and a lot of the times in the community, you've got the dip. It's nice. It gets a lot of shade. It's cool. In the hottest days of the summer. It's advantageous to build there. until you get a system like this. So, say a prayer for the people of Virginia. Let's grab a couple more updates with this one here. 44 people are unaccounted for following devastating flooding in southwest Virginia. From Kaylee Shipley, Tuesday storms brought a lot of rainfall, causing flooding issues in many parts of Virginia. The Buchanan County Sheriff's Office is now reporting that 44 people are unaccounted for following devastating flooding in Buchanan County. An estimated 100 to 150 residences have been washed away, according to the Buchanan Sheriff's Office. Review. So, if you know somebody in the Western Virginia area, give that person a call. Make sure that person is alive or is accounted for. Send a text. Send a Twitter message. Because 44 people have yet to be found. And for the state of emergency, 12 NBC on your side. Man, that house doesn't look like it had a lot of foundation at all. Governor Youngkin declares state of emergency due to severe flooding in southwest Virginia. We're deeply saddened to learn that another flood has impacted a community still recovering from last year's flood, said Youngkin. In the wake of the devastation, I want Virginians in Buchanan County to know that we're making every resource available to help those impacted by the storm as we continue to assess the situation. I want to thank our first responders and the personnel on the ground for providing assistance with our ongoing operations in Buchanan County. While rescue and recovery continues, please join me in prayer as we lift up our fellow Virginians impacted by the tragedy. WDBJ reports that according to the Buchanan County Sheriff's Office, the flooding is concentrated in Grundy's Dismal River Road area. Roads in the area are closed to everyone other than emergency responders. 100 homes have been reportedly impacted by the flooding. Bridge access has also been impacted in parts of the county as mudslides have also been reported. It's like we even have some video. Oh, goodness. So, that's what we see off of that. Again, definitely. If you know somebody in the area, reach out to them. Make sure. They'll appreciate you for it. From NBC, Japanese say final goodbye to assassinated former leader Shinzo Abe. Coming to NBC by the Associated Press. The Japanese bid their final goodbye to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Tuesday as a family funeral was held at a temple days after his assassination shocked the nation. Abe, the country's longest-serving prime minister, remained influential even after stepping down 2 years ago for health reasons. He was gunned down Friday during a campaign speech in the western city of Nara. Hundreds of people, some in formal dark suits, filled sidewalks outside of Zojoji Temple in downtown Tokyo to bid farewell to Abe, whose nationalistic views drove the governing party's conservative policies. Mourners took photos, and some have called out, "Abe-san!" as a motorcade with a hearse carrying his body accompanied his widow, Aki Abe, slowly drove by the packed crowd. Only she and other close family members, along with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and senior party leaders, attended the funeral at the temple. The hearse traveled through Tokyo's main political district, Nagatacho, where Abe spent more than 3 decades after being the first elected to parliament in 1991. It then drove slowly by the governing party headquarters, where senior lawmakers in dark suits stood outside and prayed before heading to the Prime Minister's office, where Abe served a total of nearly a decade. Kishida and cabinet members pressed their hands before their chests as they prayed and bowed towards the hearse before it headed to crematorium. On Sunday, 2 days after Abe's shocking death, his Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner won a landslide victory in elections for the upper house, the less powerful of Parliament's two chambers. That could allow Kishida to govern uninterrupted until a scheduled election in 2025, but Abe's death also opens up a period of uncertainty for his party. Experts say a power struggle within Abe's party faction is certain and could affect Kishida's grip on power. Kishida has stressed the importance of party unity after Abe's death. So, Godspeed into your next life. I don't know what it was that you believed in, Abe, because I don't really know much about the religion of Eastern Asia. But I do hope that you find peace in your next life, whichever form that may take. All right. Well, we've caught up on the important things. Let's get into some news, some politics, and some mudslinging. Joe Biden visited Israel yesterday. He managed to visit Israel and get back here and do the wall thing, which I have questions about that, I really do. But let's listen to what it is that he had to say as soon as he got off the plane in Israel. That's the guy that's in charge. That's the guy that's in control right there. What am I doing now? And, of course, all the people that are out here trying to carry water for him. Well, he is asking what the protocol is for these photos. Every country has different protocols, but you know that. You know he's asking about protocol. I'm surprised protocol isn't trending, or wasn't trending when this happened. There was a time when American leaders didn't criticize the sitting president when he was out of the country. What the heck time was that? Because that was before I was born. There was a time when GOP was led by decent human beings who cared about the country more than the party. Again, if I listen to you, Evan Ross, that time was before I was born because you have been calling every Republican a Nazi since 1984. What am I doing now? Look at the stance and the way this guy walks. This guy is not all there. No, come on, Grandpa. Just stand over here for the photo. Oh, we've got your tapioca for you. I mean, watching this with the sound off is even worse. But he had more to say about this. Let's listen to this.
I will once more return to the hollow ground of Yad Vashem to honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost.
Now, this is not as bad, except for his speechwriter should have known better than to put those two words together, because somewhere down on the page, he was about to say honor. And I'm sure he sat there and he practiced that, and they shot him full of super drugs. Or maybe it's just a complete Freudian slip, and he really speaks the same way that my friend Midget B does, and thinks about the honor of the Holocaust instead. But let's talk a bit about what happened over there from the times of Israel. Dropping to one knee, a tearful Biden moved by Holocaust survivors at Yad Vashem. From Lazar Berman. U.S. President Joe Biden conducted an emotional visit on Wednesday to the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, where he honored victims and spoke at length with 2 survivors. After a welcoming ceremony at Ben Gurion Airport, Biden headed to Yad Vashem, where he rekindled the eternal flame in the Hall of Remembrance. The president also laid a wreath on a slab under which ashes of extermination camp victims are interred. Biden was flanked during the ceremony by President Isaac Herzog, Prime Minister Yair Lapid, Defense Secretary Benny Gantz, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Holocaust survivor and chairman of the Yad Vashem Council Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, and Yad Vashem Chairman Danny Dayan. Lapid had insisted that Gantz, the son of the Holocaust survivor, be included in the Yad Vashem visit. After the wreath laying, the choir sang the song A Walk to Caesarea, or Eli, Eli, written by Hungarian Jewish World War II resistance fighter Hannah Zenes, who was executed in Hungary in 1944. Uh-oh, where'd my music go? It just stopped and I got the spinning wheel of death over there. We're still live, right? We appear to be. The emotional climax of the visit was Biden's warm, extended conversation with 2 female Holocaust survivors. Oh, jeez. You smell good, Rena Quint and Giselle Sikowitz. The president told the women to remain seated, then crouched on one knee to speak to them. Sikowitz was born in 1927 in Chust, which was then a part of Czechoslovakia. She was rounded up and confined in the ghetto before being deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and later to forced labor camps, according to Yad Vashem. Quint was born in 1935 in Piotrkow Trybunalski, Poland. In 1942, her mother and 2 older brothers were deported to the Treblinka extermination camp where they were murdered. Rena and her father were sent to Buchenwald concentration camp where her father was murdered. She was eventually sent to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. I love this part. They're gaslighting you here. Biden, a famously tactile politician who's energized by interacting with public. No, he's energized by interacting with underage girls. Was in his element with the 2 women, holding their hands and engaging in easy conversation. No, you're saying the butterscotch ones are kosher, but the caramel ones are not? As the conversation progressed, he was joined by Herzog, Lapid, Blinken, whose stepfather is a Holocaust survivor, and the rest of the senior officials accompanying him. So, the Times of Israel sure has a lot of nice things to say about the guy who just talked about the honor of the Holocaust. From Fox News, Biden makes Holocaust gaffe during Israel visit. From Bradford Betts. President Biden, visiting Israel on Wednesday, added yet another entry to his long list of gaffes, mistakenly saying we must keep alive the honor of the Holocaust. The president made his flub shortly after touching down here in Israel, kicking off a 2-day visit with the Middle Eastern country's leaders. Well, you heard that quote already. Later on Wednesday, the president visited Yad Vashem to honor Holocaust victims in Jerusalem. Wearing a skull cap, Biden was invited to rekindle the eternal flame of the memorial's Hall of Remembrance. 2 Marines placed a wreath on a stone crypt containing the ashes of Holocaust victims, and Biden listened as a cantor recited the remembrance prayer. The visit marked Biden's first visit to the Middle East since taking office. The president is expected to offer anxious Israeli leaders strong reassurances of his determination to stop Iran's growing nuclear program, saying he'd be willing to use force as a last resort. So he's already trying to fight a proxy war with Ukraine to try to get NATO involved so we don't have to, and now he wants to go back and fight with Iran. U.S. ally Israel considers Iran to be its greatest enemy, citing nuclear program, its calls for Israel's destruction, and the support for hostile militant groups across the region. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a tale that goes back long before there was a United States. Long before it was called Iran, for that matter. Persia and Israel fighting. That goes back almost to the beginning of time. The U.S. and Israel are expected Thursday to unveil a joint declaration cementing their close military ties and strengthening past calls to take military action to halt Iran's nuclear program. A senior Israeli official said before Biden arrived that both countries would commit to using all elements of their national power against the Iranian nuclear threat. So, the U.S. is going to be the bulldog for Israel again in the Middle East. Again. But as far as military goes, and the U.S. and Israel, Biden asked Israel to increase military aid to Ukraine. From Barak Ravid, author of Axios from Tel Aviv. President Biden will ask acting Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid during the meeting in Jerusalem on Thursday to increase Israel's military aid to Ukraine, U.S. officials said in a briefing with reporters. The issue of weapon supply is one of the last policy differences between the U.S. and Israel when it comes to the war in Ukraine. Under pressure from the Biden admin, Israel's adjusted its policy towards Moscow and gradually taken a more pro-Ukraine position than it did when Russia began its invasion in February. But Israel has so far not supplied advanced weaponry to the Ukraine. Ukraine has also asked Israel several times for counter-drone systems. But though requests have been rejected before the war, Israel agreed to sell those systems to Ukraine, but the license was frozen when the invasion began. Lapid, who took office as acting prime minister 2 weeks ago, has taken a more hawkish line against Russia since the invasion started. Ahead of Biden's visit, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz approved the delivery of additional equipment and emergency and civilian organization in Ukraine. The delivery will include 1,500 helmets, 1,500 protective vests, hundreds of protective suits for mine clearance, 1,000 gas masks, and other equipment, Israeli Ministry of Defense said. Guess what's heading to the black market? How does nobody see this? I don't know, but yeah. Hey, come on, man. Just send that stuff over there, man. Our taxpayers are asking questions. No, we promise. We can convince them to send you replenishments. Don't worry. They love you guys over here. Biden embraces a signature Trump achievement on his first trip to the Middle East, aiming to bring Israel and Saudi Arabia closer. From Jeremy Diamond and Natasha Bertrand. It's like Palestine is not going to be real happy with this, so Rashida won't be either. We'll look at that in just a moment. As President Joe Biden arrived here on Wednesday, he's doing something he has never done in a foreign trip, embracing one of his predecessor's legacy achievements. While much of his foreign travel in the first 18 months of office has focused on reversing the foreign policy of former President Trump and shoring up battered alliances, Biden, on his first trip to the Middle East, will embrace the Trump-era Abraham Accords that normalize relations between Israel and several Arab countries and pursue an expansion of growing Arab-Israeli security and economic ties. Biden landed in Tel Aviv just after 8 a.m. Eastern Time Wednesday, and pledged in remarks at an arrival ceremony to deepen Israel's relationship with the U.S. and other countries in the region. We'll continue to advance Israel's integration in the region, expand emerging forums and engagement, Biden said. Greater peace, greater stability, greater connection. It's critical. It's critical. What am I doing here? If I might add, for the people of the region, Repeat the line. End of quote. After arriving, Biden received briefing on the Iron Dome system and the next generation laser-enabled Iron Beam system on Wednesday. Later in the day, he visited Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem. So, well, good on him for recognizing something that was good. But it does look like Palestine's going to be pushing back to this. Let's listen to this.
Cranes and heavy machinery have been at work in Ramat Shlomo in East Jerusalem for almost 30 years. For most of the international community, these Israeli homes stand on occupied Palestinian land and are thus considered illegal, a designation Israel contests. In 2010, more than 1,000 new homes were approved for construction here, right as Joe Biden was making his first visit as vice president. It was seen as a slap in the face.
Yesterday, the decision by the Israeli government to advance planning for new housing units in East Jerusalem undermines that very trust, the trust that we need right now in order to begin as well as have profitable negotiations.
But whether the White House liked it or not, the plans move forward. Hannah Toledano lives on one of the new streets announced 12 years ago, which was named for her grandfather.
It's my road. I am Hannah Toledano.
So you feel like this land is yours?
Pardon?
This land is yours, is what you feel?
I believe this land is ours, not mine. Ours. It belongs to the Jews.
There is no doubting the strength of feeling about the land here and the different claims on it. Once, the United States looked to lead peace efforts here and influence policy, but its impact has been limited. Despite consistent American pressure on the Israelis to slow down or stop settlement construction as part of confidence-building measures with the Palestinians, the facts on the ground here in Ramat Shlomo show that the building and the expansion continues. In fact, increasingly, there is a feeling that even if the U.S. and President Biden wanted to get involved, few here would be paying much attention.
He's just not a personality for it. He might have the knowledge, he might have other ideas or whatever. He doesn't have the personality.
We don't say today to them how to build in their country. Nobody can to say us how to build in our country.
A few dozen kilometers away lies the Palestinian city of Bethlehem in the West Bank. Here, the president will find it hard to avoid stark reminders.
It is very interesting growing up in the church hearing the Palestinian city of Bethlehem, by the way. That's an interesting one to hear. Definitely. One of the things, and definitely one of the things to look at with this, and this is like I said when we sat down. Like we sat here and we talked for several minutes about the Biden admin and Israel and the military alliance with Israel and the Abraham Accords and trying to bring Saudi Arabia closer. But one thing to keep in mind and one thing to pay attention to with this is how deep the BDS movement runs in the Democrat Party. And how this will stack President Biden up against the people who are supposed to be his staunchest supporters. Now, there is to a lesser extent the anti-Semitism between the Republican Party and Donald Trump, which they tried to call him the most anti-Semitic president in history, and in reality, he was probably one of the most pro-Semitic presidents in history. But it's interesting to see how that's going to play, especially, again, Ilhan, Rashida, both coming out here being strong advocates of BDS because of their Islamic and Palestinian backgrounds, and also the major influence that they have on the younger generations, which I don't understand because Rashida, I know, was older than me, and I think that Ilhan is as well. AOC is younger than me, but that's what we see off of that. Let's grab one from the Hill. Secret Service member sent back to U.S. after altercation in Israel. Why does this keep happening? And is this, by the way, has this been happening the entire time and we're just hearing about it now? Or what's the story with this? Because I don't remember ever hearing this before Biden took office. It might have happened and it didn't make the news, but I don't remember ever hearing about this before then. From Sarakshi Rai. An employee of the Secret Service has returned to the U.S. from Israel after an alleged physical encounter led to his detention by Israel police, the agency confirmed to The Hill. A Secret Service spokesperson told The Hill in a statement that the agency was informed on Monday that an employee on duty in Israel was allegedly involved in a physical encounter just days before President Biden was due to arrive in the country. The employee was briefly detained and questioned by Israeli police, who released him without charges, according to the spokesperson. The statement added that in accordance with the agency protocol, his access to Secret Service systems and facilities was suspended pending further investigation. The incident was first reported by CNN, which identified the member detained by police as part of the Secret Service counter-assault team, a highly trained specialized tactical unit. A source told the news that the employees assaulted a woman outside of a bar. Israeli police and Israel's foreign ministry did not immediately respond to The Hill's request for comment. The incident comes 2 months after 2 Secret Service employees were sent back to the U.S. from South Korea and placed on administrative leave after those employees allegedly got into a confrontation with a taxi driver in South Korea while they were apparently intoxicated. Again, there is ample opportunity to say that this probably was happening for the entire history of the Secret Service, but we didn't hear about it. Why are we hearing about it now? What is going on over there in the Secret Service? From The Blaze. Israel's a democracy, man! President Biden says Democrats who accuse Israel of being an apartheid state are wrong. That goes along with the video that we watched over from CNN. From Alex Nitzberg. During an interview with Channel 12 News, Israel President Joe Biden disagreed with those in the Democrat Party who accuse Israel of being an apartheid state. And we have the video. I think they're wrong, Biden said. Israel's a democracy. Israel's our ally. Oh, I can already hear Stephen on this one. I can already hear this in his voice. Biden also said that he does not believe that there's any chance that either the Democrat Party at large or a large contingent of the GOP would turn its back on Israel. Oh, man. Oh, man. I can hear this in Stephen and Midget's voices, both. Let's listen.
You were really at the forefront, sir, of pushing for military and security assistance for Israel. We should note that the Obama-Biden administration oversaw the approval of the Iron Dome. But there are also other voices in the Democratic Party, sir, voices that say that Israel is an apartheid state, calling for an end of unconditional aid. There's an undeniable gap between you and those voices.
There are a few of them. I think they're wrong. I think they're making a mistake. Israel is a democracy. Israel is our ally. Israel is a friend. And I think that I make no apologies. We've provided for, in my administration, $4 billion plus another $1 billion for Iron Dome. And we're working on a laser project to be able to replace Iron Dome. It's overwhelming our interest that Israel be stable.
But if even an issue like interceptors for the Iron Dome is a controversial thing, should be concerned for the future of the relationship between Israel and the Democratic Party?
No. There's no possibility, I think, of the Democratic Party or even a significant portion of the Republican Party walking away from Israel.
And that's what I was saying. I think that there is a big disconnect in both parties there's a big disconnect in what to do with Israel, but it does seem that the people who get to leadership are always very, very pro-Israel. So we'll see how this plays. We'll see if The Hill or CNN or anybody else has anything to comment on coming from our wonderful representatives, Bowman, Tlaib, Omar, who's the other one? Ellison, and where we go from there. All right. We got to talk about this. I filibustered. I put it off for long enough. I'm going to go full disclaimer before I even get started into this. Before I step on too much of this. There are court records. The person that is involved in this has been arrested. And he did, under all green check verified accounts and on video, confess to the crime. With that being said, I still have a lot of questions about this, and I don't buy this at face value. But we're going to talk about it from both sides. First, on what the official narrative and account is, and then some of the pushback that I've had. And now that Twitter's working again, we'll go grab the tweet from Greg Price as well. So, we will start here with Mia Cathell. Breaking: the suspected rapist accused of impregnating a 10-year-old rape victim in Ohio was arrested Tuesday and booked into Franklin County Jail. Columbus Dispatch says bond was set at $2 million and that Gershon Fuentes, 27, is believed to be an undocumented immigrant. Fuentes, charged with first-degree felony rape of a child under 13 years old, was arraigned Wednesday morning. He has a preliminary hearing in Franklin County Municipal Court, scheduled for July 22nd. Breaking video outside the courtroom of Fuentes' arraignment hearing for the rape and impregnation of the 10-year-old Ohio child. The court provides translation services for the 27-year-old alleged rapist, who is reportedly an illegal immigrant. And Town Hall has obtained the full footage of Fuentes' first court appearance, which is about half an hour. The aborted child, being called the products of conception in court, was entered into evidence. For DNA testing, a detective testified to confirm the baby's paternity. Let's listen to some of this here.
All right, the charge is rape, felony of the first degree.
La acusación es violación, un delito grave de primer grado.
Under 13 years old.
La víctima tiene menos de 13 años.
Have you had adequate time to review the motion to hold the defendant without bail or bond?
Ha tenido la oportunidad para repasar el pedimento de parte del Estado para detener el acusado sin que haya fianza.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sí, Su Señoría.
All right, Mr. Meyer, if you'd like to proceed.
Señor Fiscal, señor Myers, puede seguir.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The state is asking the court to hold Mr. Fuentes without bail or bond on this case.
Sí, Su Señoría, el Estado está la madre de la víctima.
And what did she indicate?
¿Qué indicó ella?
She indicated that her 10-year-old daughter was pregnant.
Indicó que su hija de 10 años estaba embarazada.
At the time, was the daughter still pregnant?
¿En el momento seguía embarazada la hija?
Yes.
Sí.
Is that daughter still pregnant today?
¿Y sigue embarazada la hija hoy? No.
Why not?
¿Por qué no?
The victim went out of state to have a medically terminated abortion.
La víctima fue llevada afuera del estado para una aborción para terminar su embarazo médicamente.
Do you know approximately when she had that abortion?
¿Y sabe cuándo ocurrió la aborción?
The consultation was initiated on June 29.
La consultación se inició el 29 de junio.
I believe the procedure was initiated on the 30th.
Creo que el procedimiento se comenzó el 30 de junio.
And the products of conception were picked up on the 2nd of July.
Y los desechos de la aborción se recogieron el 2 de julio de este año.
All right, so that's all I'm going to do for this one here. Let's read from 10 WBNS. Report: Columbus man charged with rape of 10-year-old girl who traveled to Indiana for abortion. From 10 TV web staff. A Columbus man has been charged with impregnating a 10-year-old girl whose story of traveling to Indiana for an abortion garnered international attention, according to the Columbus Dispatch. According to court records obtained by 10 TV, 27-year-old Gershon Fuentes has been charged with 1 count of rape involving a 10-year-old victim. Court records state that a report was generated on June 22nd with the Columbus Division of Police for rape. On July 6th, the victim identified Fuentes to authorities as the person who raped her. 6 days later, detectives served Fuentes with a search warrant for a saliva sample. He was taken to police headquarters for an interview where he confessed to raping the victim, according to documents. Fuentes appeared in court Wednesday and was given $2 million bond. He is currently in the Franklin County Jail. According to Dispatch, the detective testified at Fuentes' arraignment that the victim underwent a medical abortion on June 30th. According to the Dispatch, a detective, let's see. The story of the victim traveling to Indiana for the abortion made headlines around the world following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. After the court decision, Ohio activated the state's heartbeat law, which bans most abortions around 6 weeks or when the first fetal heartbeat is detected. After the victim's story appeared in the Indianapolis Star, many questioned legitimacy, including Ohio AG David Yost. During an appearance on Fox News, Yost said the story was being used as a political weapon and the victim could have had an abortion in Ohio. In response to Yost's comments, Ohio Democratic Party Chair Elizabeth Walters said there's no exception for rape or incest under the new law. In a statement sent to 10 TV on Wednesday, Yost said the following: "My heart aches for the pain suffered by this young child. I'm grateful for the diligent work of the Columbus Police Department in securing a confession and getting a rapist off the street. Justice must be served, and BCI stands ready to support law enforcement across Ohio, putting these criminals behind bars." All right. This is what we have presented to us at this point. This may be completely unpopular, and this may cause a lot of you to click off this video. I don't buy this. Not the way it's presented, at least. I've had several problems with the way that this was presented from beginning to end. Now, how did we find out about this? Last week. Was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago already? Was this before the 4th or after the 4th? Regardless. Immediately, we start hearing a story about a 10-year-old girl who has to be whisked away to Indiana to go have an abortion. My first question there, obviously, and again, I said this at the top, I don't know enough about the biology of things to understand. I'm not a doctor and I don't go around studying 10-year-old girls. Is I was unaware in the first place that a 10-year-old girl could get pregnant. That a 10-year-old girl could menstruate. Then the story very conveniently shows up right after the Roe v. Wade overturn. But not before the overturn, when we still had the leak draft out there and we pretty much all knew that this was coming. This all shows up, and this shows up as a way for Dana Bash to go after Kristi Noem. Now that's all politically convenient in and of itself. Now the other problem that I have with this, the next problem that I have with this, is the fact that, okay, now the AG of Ohio, who would have access to the records if there was an ongoing police investigation about this, had no idea that this was going on, had no idea that this was pending and coming through the state AG's office, because in a situation like this would be state of Ohio versus Gershon Fuentes. But he has no idea this is happening, or doesn't bother to go and look it up. One of those two is true. And then immediately after, we hear and find out that this guy has no idea about this case. The next thing you know, we suddenly have an arrest. And it's an illegal immigrant. Man, I got so much stutter, I'm starting to sound like Joe Biden here. It's immediately an illegal immigrant, which tells me that this person's records are going to be dubious at best. I have a lot of questions about this, and a lot of these questions that are probably not going to get answered. But something about this does not smell right to me. I'm sorry if this offends or triggers anybody, but something about this entire thing doesn't smell right to me. It's not that I don't think that there's some sick people on the AM radio, earmuffs. There's only one word to use to describe this. That there aren't some sick fucks out there that would do something like this. Because there are. But the entire timing of this entire story just calls a lot of things into question for me. And the fact that nobody knew about it until the guy was in cuffs gives me more questions. Greg Price had a thread on this, and he is getting excoriated for this thread too, which I'll probably get excoriated as well. I've already taken some of my lumps for what I had to say about this earlier on Twitter. Greg Price. So a 10-year-old girl is raped in Ohio by an illegal alien and could have gotten a legal abortion in the state because it threatened her life. But the doctors didn't report it to the police, shipped her over to Indiana, and turned it into a media story to sell abortion to the public. And meanwhile, a bunch of libs are taking a victory lap in my mentions over a young girl being raped because I had the gall to be skeptical of a story with a single source from an abortion activist who refused to respond to any request for comment. Again, the fact that a 10-year-old girl rape victim was used as a political pawn by pro-aborts, so they didn't have to defend abortion for what it is before we knew any info about the case, and are now gloating because it turned out to be real, just shows how evil these people are. I am not saying that it's not real, but I have questions. I have a lot of questions. So, and if it turns out that there's a conviction that they can tie this guy to this girl, I hope he gets the firing squad. I really do. But there is just something about this that doesn't feel right. Alright, now that I've lost my entire audience, let's go talk about the wall. No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, who ironically lies all the time. Biden just got Mexico to pay $1.5 billion to secure the border with actual smart technology. Not a dumb wall. Feels like the media should be talking about this more. Going on to say, Mexico agreed to contribute $1.5 billion to improve infrastructure along the U.S.-Mexico border. The agreement came on the same day President Biden hosted Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador for a meeting in the Oval Office. So I'm actually going to use the ABC story here, not the Business Insider of India story that we had here before. First on ABC, Mexico to pay $1.5 billion for U.S. border security and processing, source says. From Ben Gittleson and Armando Garcia. Mexico on Tuesday agreed to contribute $1.5 billion to a joint initiative with the U.S. to improve infrastructure along the U.S.-Mexico border, according to a person familiar with the commitment. The agreement came on the same day as President Biden hosted his Mexican counterpart, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, for a meeting in the Oval Office. Part of their discussions were expected to include a commitment from the two countries to carry out a multi-year joint U.S.-Mexico border infrastructure modernization effort for projects along the 2,000-mile border, a senior Biden admin official told reporters on Monday ahead of the meeting. The infrastructure project is intended to improve processing and security along the border, the person familiar with the agreement said. What did I get taken down off of? I bet you I go over here to my monitor and find that YouTube is down, or I got kicked off for questioning. No, Twitter took me down. Interesting. I still don't know where I streamed to that, but yeah, according to this, Twitter took me down. There are even 2 people watching on YouTube. Thank you, YouTubers who are probably lurking. Alright, back to what we were doing. Part of their let's see. The infrastructure project is intended to improve processing and security along the border, a person familiar with the agreement said. Biden alluded to Mexico's investment in remarks alongside Lopez Obrador before their meeting, saying, we're making historic investments in infrastructure modernization across our 2,000-mile border with Mexico. He noted that the $1.2 trillion infrastructure law he championed last year was delivering $3.4 billion to major construction projects at the ports of entry between our two countries to make our borders safer and more efficient for people, trade, and commerce. And the American people should know, Mr. President, that you're making a significant investment on your side of the border to improve infrastructure to meet the needs of our times and the future, man. Come on. The collaboration signifies something of a reset between Mexico and the U.S. as Biden tries to distance himself from the Trump admin's contentious relationship with Mexico. So it sounds to me they're improving infrastructure and security. Now, this after the Remain in Mexico policy was overturned by the court. This doesn't sound like they're improving security. This sounds like they're putting an express lane in. Obrador gets to see his political dissidents run away rather than try to stand up to him and force a revolution. And the Biden admin gets their slave labor. And then we also get the symbolism of, and Mexico's going to pay for it. And my big question is how many Hunter-related companies is this $1.5 billion going to go into? All right, let's talk about January 6th. We're going to be close. I don't know if we're going to get to everything today, but we might get close. Just the news. J6 panel shuns live testimony from Trump associates, prefers to slice and dice taped depositions. House Democrats' January 6th committee has been showing video clips at the hearings of previously recorded depositions from associates of former President Trump rather than live public testimony. Former advisor Steve Bannon recently offered to testify in public, according to a letter written to the committee by his attorney, Robert Costello. The committee has not yet responded to Bannon's offer to testify publicly. Costello told Just the News that the committee prefers to make a television moment consistent with their narrative rather than risk the surprises inherent in live testimony. They do not encourage live testimony, Costello said in a statement. Bernie Kerik was given a conditional waiver of attorney-client privilege by President Trump if Kerik would be allowed to testify publicly. The Senate Select Committee declined. The reason they do this is to make a television moment consistent with their narrative. This is not an investigation. This is propaganda for political theater. In April, an attorney for former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik said the committee's chair, Democratic Rep. Benny Thompson wouldn't accept Kerik's offer to testify publicly and had refused to make the transcript of his interview public. They want the appearance of noncompliance, the attorney Timothy Parlatore said at the time. He told Just the News on Tuesday the committee refused to allow Kerik to testify publicly and didn't allow him to have a copy of the transcript. The committee clearly prefers taped depositions because they can edit them and remove sections that don't match the fake narrative, he said. Now that the televised public hearings have begun, the committee has been playing video clips from taped depositions given by former Trump campaign officials, former Trump White House advisors, and other members of the inner circle, including Ivanka Trump, Mark Short, Chief of Staff to former Vice President Pence, former Trump aide Jason Miller, and former Attorney General Bill Barr. Bill Stepien, former Trump campaign manager, was scheduled to appear in person before the committee on June 13th, but canceled due to his wife being in the hospital, giving birth to their child. Cassidy Hutchinson, an ex-Trump White House aide, alleged Trump wanted to join the protesters at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Her appearance before the committee was a rare example of live testimony allowed during the public hearing. And she appeared to be coached to say what it was that they wanted her to say. And it was an out-and-out lie. Uh-oh. My headphones are dying. Gonna have to do something about that. Because we've got video yet to watch. Give me a second, let me get this plugged in. On-air production! Now we're wired. Now I can't go and if my allergies act up and still be able to hear stuff. No, they charge pretty quick, so I'm pretty happy about that. But going back to what this is, what else have we heard about with non-compliance? Ginny Thomas. That's the important one. Ginny Thomas. Cipollone, by the way, is not testifying live. He's testifying on video. They're recording his depositions. Everybody out there said, oh, we've got her. We've got her. We've got the entire thing under wraps. Ginny Thomas is going to come back and testify. And then all of a sudden, she decided not to come back and testify. Mysteriously enough, it seems that they wanted to go and pre-record this, but she wanted to go back and do it live. The Secret Service agents. The ones that were in the car. And the one who supposedly was the one who told Hutchinson, even though he claims that he didn't, was ready to come out under oath and testify live in front of the committee. And they've never been reached out to. Any of this, by the way, would come out in cross if there was any such thing as a cross right now. But I think a lot of the people are starting to see through this. All right, from Axios, this one. And we'll look at the New York Times article, too. I archived that. Trump supporter at the center of January 6th conspiracy theory. It's just been hell. From Aaron Doherty. And of course, who are we talking about? The infamous Raymond Epps. Ray Epps, a Trump supporter from Arizona, traveled to D.C. on January of 2021 to support the former president, a decision that he says has haunted him since, he told the New York Times, a former newspaper. Epps emerged at the center of an unfounded conspiracy theory after the January 6th riot that pinned him as a covert FBI agent who helped incite the attack. His story underscores how quickly conspiracy theories can reverberate and their dangerous long-term impacts. Driving the news. The baseless theory, pushed by right-wing media outlets and Republican politicians, prompted death threats and resulted in Epps leaving his home and selling his business, he told the Times. And for what? Lies, Epps 61 told the Times in a day-long interview from an undisclosed location in the Rocky Mountains. All of this, it's just been hell, Epps said in the interview. After the January 6th Capitol selfie fest, Trump and his allies falsely blamed a number of actors for the violence that ensued that day, with Antifa and the FBI emerging at the center of many of the tales, per the Times. Trump allies pushed the false theory that the FBI pre-planned the attack on the Capitol to punish conservatives. No, that's not why they did that. I believe they pre-planned the attack, but it wasn't to punish conservatives. Right-wing media outlets, including Revolver, compiled selectively edited videos. Oh, like the January 6th committee, selectively edited, in an effort to show Epps as a secret government agent who was responsible for provoking the riot, per the Times. Trump, Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and Senator Cruz all elevated the conspiracy theory. I'm at the center of this thing. It's the biggest farce I've ever seen, Epps told the Times. It's just not right. The American people are being led down a path. I think it should be criminal. Revolver News, an obscure right-wing media outlet, published its first article about Epps in October, almost immediately setting off a flurry of death threats, trespassers at his home, and family members and friends turning on him. In January, Epps received a letter from someone who claimed to have been brought into the country by a Mexican drug cartel, who warned that some members discussed killing Epps, per the Time. Okay, here's the thing. I don't know if Epps is a federal agent or not. Neither do you. Neither does Revolver. The only people who know if Epps is a federal agent are Epps and his handler. Here are the questions that I have. You have video of a person urging people to go into the Capitol in a fresh, crisp, clean MAGA hat. And another video of the same man in a fresh, clean, crisp MAGA hat, leaning down and whispering to people on the barrier, and mysteriously backing off after they breached the barrier, supposedly telling them that now is their time, and it's time to go into the Capitol. Not only is he one of the only people who isn't being investigated or sitting in jail without access to a lawyer or parole for a clearly documented role in the January 6th Selfie Fest, he's the only person in the history of people who has ever worn a MAGA hat that leftoids are defending, including the mainstream news outlets like Axios. In any time, in any story other than this, Axios would be smearing this guy for the crime of wearing a Make America Great Again hat. So again, forgive me if I have questions about this. We'll read a bit from the New York Times article. It's just been hell. Life as a victim of the January 6th conspiracy theory. From Alan Feuer. Up a winding country road in a trailer park half a mile from the cattle ranch lives a man whose life has been ruined by the January 6th conspiracy theory. Ray Epps has suffered enormously in the past 10 months as right-wing media figures and Republican politicians have baselessly described him as a covert government agent who helped instigate the attack on the Capitol last year. Strangers have assailed him as a coward and a traitor and have menacingly cautioned him to sleep with one eye open. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. He was forced to sell his business and his home in Arizona, fearing for his safety and uncertain of his future. He and his wife moved into a mobile home in the foothills of the Rockies, with all their belongings crammed into shipping containers in the high desert meadow a mile or two away. And for what? Lies, Mr. Epps asked the other day, with a look at pained exhaustion. All of this, it's just been hell. Almost from the moment the violent mob stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, allies of former President Trump have sought to shift the blame for the attack away from the people who were in the pro-Trump crowd that day to any number of scapegoats. First, they pointed at Antifa, the leftist activists who have a history of clashing with Trump's backers, but who did not show up when the Capitol was breached. Bullshit. Then they tried to fault the FBI, which according to those who spread the baseless tale, planned the attack to provoke a crackdown on conservatives. Wait. So, you're telling me that an organization, let's go back to Antifa for just a second. An organization that literally has shown up anywhere that Trump supporters are, including the Pride Boys, that has literally been everywhere the Pride Boys have been, every single time they've shown up, chose this one particular instance where the biggest concentration of Trump supporters was going to be. And they just, this one time, especially in DC, where they'd get away with it and get cut loose by a sympathetic DA, just said, nah, fam, this one's not worth it. And you expect me to believe this? Furthermore, with EPS. Remember back in September, when we had the Justice for J6 rally that was supposed to be in the park, in the Capitol, where 10,000 heavily armed Trump supporters were set to go and do the renew of the Capitol. You know, they brought everybody out in full riot gear to the Imperial March. Remember that? And the only people who showed up seemed to have brand new fades with tan lines included, wearing sunglasses with bulges in their pockets. And the only person who was arrested with a weapon, by the way, showed his FBI card and got out of it. I don't buy anything the mainstream news. And again, between Axios and the Times, the only person in the history of Make America Great Again hats who is being supported by the New York Times and Axios is the person who was caught on video telling people that they need to go into the Capitol. All right. John Bolton. He's mad at you evil snowflakes. John Bolton responds to snowflakes upset that he helped topple foreign governments. From Chris Pandolfo. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton responded to his critics on Wednesday after admitting that CNN, that he's helped organize coups d'etats in other countries. Bolton was being interviewed on Newsmax when anchor Bianca De La Garza asked him about his controversial statement. Why the hell was he on Newsmax? I do have to ask you, also your comment yesterday on CNN about coups and orchestrating them. It's getting a lot of play, as you know. What would you like to say to that? Obviously, the U.S. is a world superpower, and were you surprised that some of the pickup there was about your talk? Obviously, you've written about Venezuela a lot in your book, De La Garza said. Let's listen.
Ambassador, I do have to ask you also, your comment yesterday on CNN about coups and orchestrating them, it's getting a lot of play, as you know. What would you like to say to that? Obviously, the U.S. is a world superpower, and were you surprised that some of the pickup there was about, your talk? Obviously, you've written about Venezuela a lot in your book.
Well, I think there are a lot of snowflakes out there that don't understand what you need to do to protect the United States. I'm not going to get into specifics. I did write about Venezuela in my memoir. And I think that any president that's not willing to do what it takes to protect the interest of the American people needs to have some counseling.
So you go and nation build in another nation. And here's the other problem that I have with this. Now, this guy was on CNN trying to say that, we all see Trump, he doesn't have to be smart to organize a coup, but, I've organized coups in this country. With the Ray Epps thing, with the fact that this conveniently brings us up to a second impeachment, which they were calling for from the very end of the first impeachment. This brings us up to have January 6th committee, and this also brings up the ability for us to come and, talk about, oh, well, Lauren Boebert's an insurrectionist, and anybody who supports Trump is an insurrectionist, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is an insurrectionist. A lot of things are very, very convenient right now, and now we have somebody on camera that's admitted that he's organized coups. Is it really that big of a stretch of the imagination to believe that he's organized a coup against his own country? Any president who's not willing to do what it takes to protect his people from evil MAGA, replace dictatorship or terrorism in another country or anything else. Replace that with evil MAGA and see how that sounds to you. This bothers me. This bothers me that this person still has connections in the government. All right. What do we got left? Can we do it? We got to reorganize that because otherwise my flow will be gone. Couple other finish ups here. From the BBC, Ukraine to consider legalizing same-sex marriage amid war. From Sophie Williams. A petition in Ukraine calling for same-sex marriage to be legalized has gained enough signatures for the president to consider the proposal. This is the most important thing to you right now? As you're begging the rest of the world for money to go pay your healthcare workers, this is the most important thing to you right now? The petition has more than 28,000 signatures, meaning Volodymyr Zelensky now has 10 days to respond. Homosexuality is not illegal in Ukraine, but same-sex marriages and civil partnerships are not recognized. This has caused particular problems for LGBTQIRA-MIGI-TXTYABTYA people signing up for the military following Russia's invasion. Dude. If you can't put a rifle in somebody's hands to protect the country that you hold dear because he takes it in the butt, you deserve to lose this war. In my country, anybody who wants to pick up a firearm to defend himself from wild animals, from criminals, from his own government, but I repeat myself, or from an outside government, has the ability to do so, no matter the color of his skin, no matter the gender, no matter which gender he likes to take it from, no matter what. Unless there is criminal lunacy, the person has a convicted felony record. And if crap hit the fan, and especially with all the excess armaments that we have in this country, if crap hit the fan and they did try to launch an offensive into this country, I would probably loan one out to my neighbor and say, hey, just make sure you point it that way, not at me. Those are the bad guys. We'll discuss what to do with this afterwards. If you can't militarize and arm up the people who like to take it from behind, you deserve to lose. Let's see. For example, under Ukrainian law, if someone is in a same-sex relationship dies, the partner cannot collect their body or bury them. The online petition says, at this time, every day can be the last. One LGBTQIRA-MITXTYBTAXTYAMGLPRRMATIR organization has described the petition as an important moment for members of the community. Well, my first question is do all the people with the blue and yellow flag in their Twitter profile, do they know this, that this is the case? This whole world is a joke at this point. From ABC, the White House. To help salmon, dams may need to be removed. From Nicholas K. Gerianos. The Biden admin on Tuesday released 2 reports, arguing that removing dams on the lower Snake River may be needed to restore salmon runs to sustainable levels in the Pacific Northwest, and that replacing the energy created by the dams is possible, but will cost $11 billion to $19 billion. The reports were released by the White House Council on Environmental Quality. Business as usual will not restore salmon, said Brenda Mallory, chair of the council. The Columbia River system is the lifeblood of the Pacific Northwest. If the 4 Snake River dams were ultimately removed, it would be the largest such project in U.S. history. In 2012, the Elwha Dam on Washington State's Olympic Peninsula was removed to restore habitat. At the time, the National Park Service said the elimination of the Elwha Dam was the largest such project in U.S. history. So, what happens with all the green energy that comes out of this dam? And by the way, I am all for finding ways to repopulate salmon because I love salmon. In fact, I kind of want to go over to the store tonight, even though I know I've got food here. I've got chili and I've got brats that I need to eat. But I kind of want to go to the store tonight and go get some salmon because I've been thinking about it since over the weekend. I have some from the last time I was on my fishing trip, but a lot of that's freezer burnt. Or I'm sorry, not the last time, because the last time somebody, Ryan, left all the salmon out in the hot sun. Ryan. So yeah, pretty much all the wild caught stuff that I have right now is freezer burnt, which I can still use it for casseroles and stuff, but to actually have a good salmon steak, I want to go get some salmon right now. But at what point? And at what point are we going to sit here and look at this and say, you know, these people are calling for the green energy. What's greener than hydroelectric? Natural water flows. Spin the turbine. You don't need to heat anything up. Are they mocking us at this point? I don't know, but that's what we have off of that. All right, let's do a little bit of government people behaving badly, and then we'll do thing I like and thing that I hate and head out of here for the day. Here's one about Josh Hawley. Greg Price. Hawley, why are you using the term person with a capacity for pregnancy instead of woman? Bridges, your line of questioning is transphobic and opens trans people to violence. Hawley, you're saying I'm opening up people to violence for saying women can have pregnancies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of the witnesses for being here. Before I want to visit with you, Ms. Meskey, but before I do, I just want to clear one thing up. Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing them.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5.
I love the fact that we're sitting here. She gets asked her question, says, "Hey, your question is violent." I mean, just be honest at least and say that you don't want to answer the question.
5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
Because of
for
my
us-
line of questioning? So
Because-
we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist
I'm
is
denying that trans
dangerous.
people exist by
Are
asking
you?
you if you're
Are
talking
you?
about women
Are you?
having pregnancies.
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can
So
get
you are
pregnant.
denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you, or are they
Absolutely.
also treated like this, where
No, no, no,
they're
they're
told
allowed
that
to
they're
question.
opening up people to violence?
We have a good
by
time in my
questioning?
class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot
I
just in this
know,
exchange.
absolutely.
Extraordinary.
If you're on a platform that has clown emojis, throw them up there. Throw the globes up there too, by the way. But if you have a platform that has clown emojis, throw them up. All right, what else do we have here? Kamala Harris.
Together, we are expanding access to transportation. Seems like maybe it's a small issue, it's a big issue. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home. Together, we are expanding access to transportation.
Let me see. We've got the transcript here too. Let me see if we can figure this out. Let's translate this. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work. Audio Jack said that no one tried to tried the argument that someone's sex is different from their gender. Dude, I can't imagine what Generation Z is going to be trying to figure out once they have to go try to do their own plumbing. You know, the instructions are going to say place the male end up into the female end and bolt down, and they're just going to be, yeah, you're assuming their gender. What is the Active Shooter Alert Act, by the way? We'll have to look into that because we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. All right, and the last one before we do Thing I Like and Thing That I Hate is let's listen to what Mazie Hirono has to say about the Founding Fathers.
Originalism, the justices who take that approach go all the way back to our founding fathers and pretend that they know what our founding fathers meant when they drafted the Constitution. I use the word pretend because who the heck would know what our founding fathers meant? Is there any reference to AR-15 rifles in our Constitution? No. Originally.
Oh, Maisie. Maisie. Oh, Maisie. If only there was a document that explains. Are the AR-15s in the Constitution? There was no Twitter in the Constitution. Just so you know. I know that's the tired and cliche argument, but let's hear this out to its logical end here. If only there was a document. In fact, if only there was a document and books of letters written by the founders that explain exactly what they meant. I do understand that the Federalist Papers are not legal documentation. But they have been accepted as what the founders thought when they were writing the Constitution and what they debated back and forth with each other over when they were writing the Constitution. Man, if only there was some documentation out there. All right, let's do a thing that I like and a couple things that I hate and head out of here for the day. All right, thing that I like. We've got video with this one here. Which, in fact, I'll refresh this now that Twitter is working. New Yorkers can take a bite out of capitalism by munching on popsicles shaped like the heads of billionaires Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Jack Ma, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg near McCarran Park in Brooklyn. Kind of wish Fanning was still here for this one because I know that he would enjoy this. Let's listen to the video. The marimba!
Tastes good. A little strawberry-y, creamy. Doesn't taste like over $100 billion, but it's good.
Is it in his likeness?
I don't know, you tell me. I mean, as far as popsicles go, I'd say it looks like Elon Musk. You know, it's not necessarily a self-portrait, but it's pretty close.
It tastes actually pretty good.
All right, so that is what they have to say. I got an article that goes with this as well. From CBS, Eat the Rich ice cream truck sells $10 popsicles shaped like Bezos, Musk, and others. An artist collective in Brooklyn is selling popsicles shaped like billionaires, including Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, with the tagline, Eat the Rich. But the $10 price tag on the frozen treats has some people pointing out the irony of criticizing the world's wealthiest while engaging in peak capitalism. The ice cream pops are offered by the artist collective Mischief and sold via food trucks in New York City and Santa Monica, California. The popsicles are proven popular. They sold out Tuesday in New York, Bloomberg reported. The treats were designed to start a conversation. Mischief's chief revenue officer, Daniel Greenberg, told CBS Money Watch via email. Even though the items were selling well, Mischief will stop its project Wednesday, and there are no plans to expand this, he said. Translation. They made their money, and they're going to go lap their way out to the bank at this point. Billionaire wealth soared during the pandemic, boosting the fortunes of Musk, Bezos, and others, and sparking calls from some lawmakers for a wealth tax amid widening inequalities. While the popsicles are poking fun at the world's richest, some individuals on social media say the joke is those paying $10 a pop. I'm going out on a limb here and saying selling overpriced popsicles to end capitalism is peak champagne socialism LARP, noted one Twitter user referring to the live action role-playing. Another pointed out an ice cream truck selling Eat the Rich popsicles for $10 to influencers to post on Instagram so they can sell ads, ironically, is peak capitalism. Oh, there's more video.
Yeah, time to eat the rich, y'all. We got Bill Gates, we got Jack Ma, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and the most popular Elon Musk. Let's go, baby.
That dude is laughing his way all the way to the bank right now. A lot of people, and of course this is supposed to be an artist collective. They're supposed to be anti-capitalists selling capitalist faces on popsicles for $10, dude. The only people who are anti-capitalist are the people who are buying this stupid crap. Trust me, when I tell you, the people that are selling these are not anti-capitalists as much as they like to, because they can't come out and say that they're capitalists on their way to the bank. To the people that they're trying to sell to because they'd get dragged out in stocks. The people would never go to the food truck. So of course they have to masquerade themselves as anti-capitalist, but no, these people are laughing their way all to the bank. Stupid people giving up their money to show that they're anti-capitalist the way that God intended. Most people would think this is thing that I hate. No, this is hilarious. And by the way, this is another big reason why we need government, as much as I hate government, because people that are buying this are too stupid to take care of themselves. It's plain and simple. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. All right, one from the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Wisconsin is changing 28 place names that slur Indigenous women. Here's where they are and what the new names might be. From Frank Weisbieles, yes. On top of the George Washington University team. On top of all the Native American named teams that are now suddenly changing their names. Except for the Braves, ironically enough. The Cleveland Indians, everything else. Now we actually have to change geographical names. Yellowstone's doing this too. From Frank Weisbieles, U.S. Department of the Interior officials are working with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to change the names of 28 places in Wisconsin that have been deemed derogatory towards Indigenous women. Most are bodies of water such as lakes, rivers, and creeks. Most of the northern and western portions of the state, but some are in northeast Wisconsin. The term squaw may have started as a mispronunciation of an Algonquin word for women, but over time has taken a significantly more derogatory meaning. The term was used to name some places in Wisconsin by white settlers, mostly in the 1800s. U.S. Department of the Interior Secretary Deb Haaland recently signed a directive that declares squaw a derogatory term against Indigenous women and implements a process for replacing the names of places with that term across the country. Haaland was the first Indigenous woman to hold the Interior Secretary position. You think she went and ran and got elected just so she could do this? Chris Goodwill, tribal liaison for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, says the DNR is preparing for the second round of federal process and gathering other geographic names in the state that are derogatory. Here are 28 places in Wisconsin that will be getting new names, including their locations and proposed new names. One, Little Squaw Lake. Proposed names: Marl Bay, Messenger Creek, Bagley Creek, McDonald Creek, Green Island. 2, Squaw Lake. Same suggestions. 3, Squaw Lake in Outagamie County, between Appleton and Fremont. Rat River, Potters Creek. There's already a Potters Creek in Wisconsin. Black Otter Lake, Black Otter Creek, Wolf River. Man, how many times did they use the word squaw in this state? Goodness. None of this is down by me, is it? No, it's mostly up here. Mostly in places I don't go to. Although I've been around here before. So yes, we're continuing to go down and change the names of everything because activists got involved and said, hey, what's the story here? Now, I've heard conflicting stories about this, whether squaw is actual term for woman, which it appears to be brought up in this article, or whether it's term for a prostitute. I don't know. But this is probably coming to a state near you as well, especially if you have a heavy Native American presence. So watch for this, and when you make the description of someplace that you've known for almost your entire life, you might have the mob come down on your head. Alright, thing that I hate, number 2. Joe Pompliano tweets out, "This is wild. BMW is now selling a monthly subscription service for heated seats in your car. Monthly fee, $18. Annual fee, $180. The car will come with all the necessary components, but payment is needed to remove a software block. Welcome to microtransaction hell." It is probably not a huge stretch as to try to figure out why I hate this. So read briefly from The Verge, and then there's a little bit of a debunk from Ars Technica, but not a huge one. The Verge. BMW starts selling heated seat subscriptions for $18 a month. From James Vincent. BMW is now selling subscriptions for heated seats in a number of countries, the latest example of a company's adoption of microtransactions for high-end car features. A monthly subscription to heat your BMW's front seats costs about roughly $18 with options to subscribe for a year, $180, 3 years, $300, or pay for unlimited access for $415. It's not clear exactly when BMW started offering this feature as a subscription or in which countries, but a number of outlets this week spotted its launch in South Korea. BMW has slowly been putting features behind subscriptions since 2020, and heated seats subs are now available. BMW's digital stores in countries including the UK, Germany, New Zealand, and South Africa. It doesn't, however, seem to be an option in the US. Yet. Plus, we have other subscription services. Safety camera information, Driving Assistant Plus, which, like, safety camera, that would involve cloud, and Driving Assistant Plus, that would probably involve satellite imagery. So those I could see. But we've got High Beam Assistant, front seat heating, Iconic Sports Sound, Map Update Package. That's again something, both of those involve actual software coming from, or external satellite relay. Online entertainment voucher service inclusive. Yeah, most of these are things that involve an external source. But front seat heating for this, which will be satellite done again. The biggest problem with this is that they are putting in the equipment to do so. They're actually putting in the hard components to heat your seats. And those of us who have been around the industry for a long time already know. And this is something to keep in mind, by the way. Now, this will void your warranty if you do this. But if you're out of warranty, who cares? Like, once I go and buy a 2022 BMW in 2070, because I can finally afford it, that subscription line is getting cut, and it's getting wired to a momentary contact switch that I'm going to attach onto the seat. But my big question there is, how do you intend to stop that, what I just described, from happening? Exactly what is it that you plan to do to keep people from cutting the hard line? Well, your entertainment system might not work. That actually I could see them trying to find a way to do. If you cut this line, you'll have a check engine light. No. This is way too easy to get around. And those of us who have been around this industry forever know how to do this kind of thing. But Ars Technica tells you that this is probably not coming to US cars. No, BMW is not making heated seats in subscription for US cars. But it's coming. If they're doing it in Korea, they're experimenting to do it everywhere. If there's a topic guaranteed to get rage clicks, it's one about BMW making some of its car options available as a subscription rather than a one-time purchase. That story is doing the rounds again today after the news the Bavarian automaker is at it again. So, you won't be able to see this right now, but it may come down the pipes. They're already experimenting to do it, so... In 2020, it was revealed that it still had designs of this arena, selling cars with software lock features like adaptive cruise, high beam assist, and even heated seats. For example, a British BMW buyer can choose to pay $888 or 750 pounds to buy Driving Assistant Plus, which combines adaptive cruise and lane keeping outright, which some of that, again, may involve a satellite service. I want to know who in Germany thought this was a good idea. I have no idea, but we're done. We're out of here. We got through everything again today. Oops, wrong button. Running a bit behind, but we got through everything. So let's call it for the day. Where's my outro music? So with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted with us in the live chat, kept us honest, kept us going, and we're able to get in here in spite of the fact that we couldn't go back out and advertise on Twitter. Come back here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, more talk about the topics that are going on here, and live chat. That's right. Tomorrow we will check in with some of the things that you guys have had to say in the live chat, some of the things that that are going on here. I do pay attention to the live chat, not on air, of course, because, you know, the Twitch spurs will come out here and they'll try to derail the conversation. But I do say a special thank you when we do look through some of the live chat for Friday here. So if you want to get your name read aloud, get your last minute message in now. Otherwise, be back here tomorrow for the special thank you and to see some of the stuff you guys are saying here tomorrow as well. Looking forward to that. Looking forward, as always, to say the special thank you to everybody because you guys really do make this show. I couldn't do this without you. Come join us here 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.